Hello, y'all on YouTube. This is Rob from Rob's Nerdy Knives. Today I have a interesting Rob's Rambling, a little something that I was asked by several folks actually. It's I don't know, the why knives? Why am I into knives? And wh- where'd my interest come from? And why am I collecting them? And even my wife said I don't get it. And so I thought it would be an interesting little kind of rambling episode to talk about me and how I got into them. And when I hear other people's journeys getting into knives, some of them are similar. Some may not be, but some of them are. So I just thought I would talk about this and kind of see, what you guys think of it and where your journeys brought you and where you are at in your journey with knife collecting and how you got into it. So I guess, the first thing is, why knives? Well, there's a lot of things that you could talk about knives. Knife collecting really started, I guess, historically in the 19th century. When I looked it up, did a little search of the history behind there. Official collecting really kind of started in the 19th century, and then it started to become more formalized, if you will, in the 1940s. I guess that's when they started having like knife clubs where people would I guess, get together and talk about their collections. And then the custom knife collection or collecting began in the late 1960s, around when I was born. That's when people would start collecting really the custom knives, and that was the big boom that kicked off there and has been going on ever since. So that's kind of the history of it. But what brought me into it? I guess read a little bit about the psychology behind it too, and I thought it was really interesting to find this out because they say that many times when people get into knife collections or collecting, it's very unintentional. And I guess that was true for me. I guess mine started with, when I was 18, I was out of high school and I thought I should get a knife. So I got a little Gerber knife. I still have it just because it's the very first knife I ever bought. And it's a USA made knife, and I'd have to find it and get it out. But I bought it, carried it around with me forever, had it in my pocket. It was probably some cheap steel and some plastic kind of scales on there, and it rolled out and had a back lock on it. But it was a Gerber knife made in the USA, and I just had it all the time and used it quite a bit. So that was my very first knife. Then I bought a CRKT, Columbia Knife. What is it? Columbia River Knife and Technology, or I think that's what it stands for. Cricket, people sometimes call it, but it's CRKT. And that knife I had for quite a bit, and I used that. It was OS 8, I believe, and I sharpened it quite a bit, a few times with some really cheesy sharpeners, but it kept it sharp, and at least I could use it. I eventually gave that to my son, and I think he might still have that knife because I then went into Cabela's one day, and it was several years ago, and I saw a Benchmade, and I thought, well, that's cool. It's orange. Orange is my favorite color. It's always has been. It's a very bright, strong color, and I like it. It's just something that I dig, and so I saw this, and it's kind of like a hunter's orange, right? And so that was really a cool color to me, and um, I bought it. It was like $100 knife, and matter of fact, it was on sale, and I got it for $100. And so that was a really expensive knife for me. I'd never spent that much before that. The CRKT, I think I spent $50 or $45 on it. Those I think are now $50 or $60. But I thought that was a crazy amount of money to spend on it. But I really enjoyed the $40 knife I'd had for a few years and carried that quite a bit. So then when I got that Benchmade, I mean, I loved it. It was really cool. It had the axis lock and thumb studs, and you could flip it open, which I thought was just crazy. And I loved the way it felt in my hand, and it just felt so much better. And honestly, going from spending, maybe $10, $15 to spending $40 to spending $100 was huge. Really some great knives along the way that I got into. And so I got that first Benchmade, and I loved it. And so I was like, wow, there's really better knives out there. That's really cool. So then I saw that there was all these other Benchmades. So I bought a bunch of Benchmades over the years, and really really loved my Benchmades. I thought they were the best knives in the world. Couldn't think of any other knife that I would possibly want until, well, I saw some and ran into them and started using them. And I thought, well, this is really cool. That's interesting. I didn't know about these other knives. So I bought those. And over the time, my journey was, it was unintentional. I started collecting a bunch of knives, and had since gotten knives that I had saw other people had and thought these were the really cool knives that you should have. So I bought them. And I realized, well, they weren't really the cool knife that I want and I would use and I would like. So eventually I had this collection of knives that I, I, I knew that people had in their collection and it would be good for your collection if you were a knife collector. And I got them because people said they were really great, but I realized they weren't necessarily great for me. And that's when I kind of ran into the kind of mind blowing conclusion or understanding or enlightenment, whatever you call it. It's you finally realize that hey, wait a second, I should collect the knives that I like, that I love, that I enjoy, and the ones that I want to use. Not the knives that everyone else tells me I should be buying, and these are the cool ones. And if you're going to have a knife collection, you should have these in your collection. And I also realized some people collect knives just to collect them. They just want to have them in their collection. I mean, some people will collect the same knife and will have 20, 30 different variations. Some even will buy the exact same knife several times over just to have it in their collection. Good for you. And if that's what you do, awesome. Enjoy that collection, enjoy those knives. That wasn't for me. Um, I guess, also it talked a little bit about, the psychology, just to jump back here real quick. So the psychology talks a little bit about how, you know, uh, in the history of mankind, that we've always collected things and we tend to collect them. It's like some sort of deep human trait or archetype, which means it's some kind of primal thing that we tend to collect things, maybe because our hunter gatherer or because we need to have things for protection and for tools to do things with. And if you realize it, knives are primal. They were one of the first tools that you used to live. You used it for life, to cut things, to cut, you know, food. You cut fruits, vegetables, meat. You hunted with them. Even used them for defense. You used them for building. Cutting things to build your where you were going to live. You cut down vines to tie things with. You cut animal skins to make clothing with. All these things, very primal thing. And it's always been something that, it's absolutely critical for survival. They talk about these survivalists. They can go out in the woods with just a knife and survive and make everything they need. I'm not that guy, but I, I thought that was really, that's interesting. And then it's also like a timeless kind of craft tool. It's timeless because it's a crafted tool that can vary and there can be refined versions of it. And those refined versions are something so primal. So if you think about it, it's a primal tool for life, defense, food, eating. Keeping animals away. Many times, probably. Cutting foods to eat, vegetables, fruits, things like that, building things. And at the same time, it's dangerous, but it's very necessary. Knives as tools are dangerous. They can be very dangerous. They can be very, hurtful and used in bad ways that you don't want anybody ever to do that. But when they're used as the tools that they're intended to be, that can be so necessary and so important. I mean, think about a chef. The things that they can create and make are phenomenal when they use that knife to cut and meat, vegetables, things that they then will cook and create with, and even at times, design and make these beautiful presentations are just amazing. There's elegance there. So those are things that draw us in, and I think that drew me in. And then you get to the point of having the object and owning it and using it and enjoying it. Once you have it, it's something you can actually use in your collection. So I think of like here's my Spyderco Shaman. I love this knife. It's such a useful tool. I cut everything from fruits, vegetables, packaging. Then you have this beautiful Enrique Mula, Enrique Pena X Series. This is the Mula Indama steel. Beautiful, beautiful knife, but very functional and very functional steel, right? You have this Microtech Annex, gorgeous knife right here. Big, beautiful DLC coated blade. M390 made by Reich Knives, one of their overseas versions. I mean, they make a lot of USA stuff, right? but beautiful blade with the carbon fiber, but very useful, very tactical, meant for gloves, people out there and, working hard and doing big things. You think of like the Guardian Tactical Recon, an OTF right here. Very, very useful to have an OTF. One-handed deployment. In some states, there's even laws where if you only have one hand, you can carry an OTF, but other people can't. An OTF stands for out the front. So those states will allow someone with only one hand to use this because it can be operated with a single hand. And then you have like this right here, Lian Ma, the GSD, Get Things Done. It really stands for something else, but I won't say it because I don't want to get my channel flagged and, for using bad words. But so this is the GSD version 2. Beautiful space coral, fat carbon inlays here, titanium with the orange peel. Scale right here. It looks almost like an integral, but it is two pieces put together. The backspacer's built in. An M390 really flat hand rubbed satin blade finish. And then you have this like Arnaud Bernard. This is the iMamba. Beautiful, almost semi custom production, very high end production. Knife made out of South Africa, made by the Arnaud Bernard, or the Arnaud Bernard's 4 sons, the brothers. And this right here, is titanium, sandblasted or glass blasted titanium handles. Looks a little bit like Chris, if you will, Chris Reeve knives. But this is, it's ball bearing, beautiful RWL 34 steel with a beautiful polished hollow grind. Just a fun knife. These are all knives that are so useful. And I actually carry all of these. And so for my journey, my collection, they're objects that I collect because I use them and I want to use them. If I have a knife in my collection that I don't use, I won't have it in my collection. I'll sell it. For instance, I had the Vero Engineering Axon. Love that knife. Beautiful, beautiful knife. Just recently, but I had stopped carrying it. I really did. I just stopped carrying it. I don't know why. If it was the design, I had some other designs I liked more. It wasn't as flickable. It was a little hard to deploy that giant blade. My fingers got, tired whenever I used it. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too old and my fingers are not strong, but you know what I mean? I mean, it just was a knife that was no longer part of my collection, and at least my carry, if you will. When I say collection, it's are knives that I carry and that I'll use. Now, for other people, that may not be true for you. Your collection may be things you just collect. You just have in your collection because you want to be able to pull it out and admire it, maybe flick it a few times, if you will, and enjoy that knife in your collection for whatever reason. Show it off maybe a little bit, do a video or something, or bring it to your friends. And that's cool. If that's your thing, go for it. That's not where I'm at in my journey. All my knives I use. I mean, nobody comes over and goes, "Oh, let me see your knives." I'm not there. I'm not showing off my knives. I don't have any knife clubs where I'm at in Texas. And I don't go around showing them or anything. I just like to carry them and collect them so I can use them. And so when I have those extra knives, they go up for sale. And I've done that. And there'll probably be a couple of my knives in my collection that'll go up for sale yet again. Because, at some point I can have so many knives and not carry them all. Some of them I really enjoy carrying, but I just have so many other good knives to carry that I know I'll carry them again, so I'm going to keep them. Right? So some of these right here have kind of become that. Every one of these I really enjoy. And I wasn't sure if I was going to keep this one, honestly. But I have since really enjoyed this one a lot. Even though it's got these proprietary screws, it makes it a little more difficult to work with and take apart, but it is an integral. It's really nice, which means it's one piece of aluminum, and that makes it a lot more difficult to make, right? You make one mistake, boom, that piece of aluminum is gone. Sorry, not aluminum, titanium. Forgive me, I don't know what I'm speaking about. Titanium with a carbon fiber, it's 12 carbon fiber inlay. So that right there is, something that's really nice. I've never had an OTF, right? This was my first OTF that I really bought, and it's a full-size one. I had another one that I never used. I returned it. Great knife, just wasn't something I was going to use, but it was really small. And I don't use little itty-bitty. This was the first big one. This is the Recon 035, and I believe they make an 025 or something. And it would be like close to the 025. I didn't like that. But then I also heard this had this little plate that made the actuation when you close and open it just really very smooth. And it's true, it does. It's something that I can actually work with my hand. And so I really enjoy this. This is a really nice knife. The way you work it, you just get under here, push up, you hear it drag down, pull down, it just opens and closes really well. So I've enjoyed that. It's will I get another OTF? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I might not, and this might be my only OTF, and I'm okay with that. I didn't know if I was going to get more Spydercos. I have the Para 2, the Para Military 2, and I have the Para 3, both by Spyderco, and I have a Shaman. Now the Shaman, every time I think I'm about to sell it, and I actually sometimes I put it up for sale a couple times, and then I realize, yeah, I like this knife, and then I carry it and I go, yeah, I really like it. I'm going to keep this knife, so I take it off and I don't sell it. And no one's bought it, so that's fine, because I put some custom scales on there. I like fat carbon, and I put some orange fat carbon scales on there that I really liked. And so because I asked for a little bit more, no one was willing to pay for it at the time, and I guess they just didn't like the orange carbon fat scale combo, which was good because I kept a knife, didn't sell it. So it became one of those that I kept in my collection because I realized I really like it. So those are some of those that I like. I have some other knives that I'm really enjoying. Like I have the Penguins by QSP. I have the Mini, the regular Penguin, and the Penguin Plus, and I really enjoy those. Now, typically I don't like the cheaper versions of those Penguins. I have one that's 14C28N steel, and it's got the red fat. Sorry, it's not fat carbon, but it's a red and carbon fiber mixed. It's like red G10 and carbon fiber, kind of a shredded mixed together, and it's an inexpensive one. So it's good deal, good buy if you want something cheap to carry around and not worry about. Um, but it's not one that I would carry, and I didn't care for it. But then when I saw the traditional pocket knives, let me see here. I might have it right over here. Yeah. So I'm gonna grab it real quick. So here's these two traditional pocket knives. This is the jigged mill titanium scales. It's a frame lock. It's got the mill deep pocket carry clip. I really like that. Thumb stubs allows you to deploy it really nicely, and the action is beautiful. And I can also middle finger flick it very easily, even I think on the left hand. Yep, it's a little harder left-handed, obviously with the smaller one, but just really nice knife. I've enjoyed this knife. It's part of my collection now. I really, really like this. Now, the cheaper version probably wouldn't keep in my collection, but these guys definitely, they definitely became part of my collection. Another knife that's not necessarily a big budget knife. It's one of those quiet under the radar knives by WE. I think it's got a fuller here that's really great for reverse flicking. It's titanium liners, locks up really well. Titanium milled, or maybe a titanium built pocket clip, but it is titanium, and the action is just really nice. And I enjoy this knife. I enjoy just the full flat grind. Is just, to me, it's very sweet. It's very useful. I really like this blade shape. It sharpens up really nicely, and for me, this is just a comfortable knife to carry, and it's a comfortable knife to fidget. And so this one kind of got in my collection, and I realized I really enjoy carrying this. I would carry this more if I didn't have so many other choices, right? And some of these are great choices, but that's kind of where my journey came from. So that's what they talk a little bit about the psychology, and so it's owning it. There's also a part of the knife collection that also comes into play, and it's another part of the psychology. It's the chase. They call it the chase. It's we redefined the term in a nice way. We call it our Grail knife. So we have these Grail knives, and I have several Grail knives. Trust me, I do. And they're knives that I would love to get a hold of. For instance, one of them has been for a long time is the Protec Mordax. I had a Protec Mordax. It was one of the drops in the CPM 20 CV. Loved the thing. My next door neighbor was moving. Loved that knife. Kept asking to buy it. And I knew Protec had announced at the Texas Blade Show last year that they were coming out with this new one that was going to be with drop, and it was still, Ferrum Forge still helped them develop it, right? So it's still Ferrum Forge design, but they were going to release through them, and they didn't have to go through drop. And it was going to be in MagnaCut, and I thought, oh, that's awesome. And they said, hey, it's going to be releasing soon. So I sold them my Protec Mordax. I love that knife. That's one of my favorite button locks ever. So I sold it to him, and sure enough, had one drop. Boom, it was gone. Didn't even know when it dropped. It was so fast. It was in and out. I got totally bamboozled in a way that I felt like I never even knew it was here, and it was gone. And I never had a chance to get it. I was so bummed about that particular one. So there you go. So I've been hunting after that one ever since. But in the process of hunting, I've seen that there's some other great button locks. Because as time goes on, a great design, the greatest form of flattery, if you will, is other designs will build off of something great that's designed. If you make a beautiful, full flat grind blade that just cuts and slices really well, other people will design that. I think of Leon Ma, his design here with the get stuff done knife, just a really functional knife, right? um, really functional in so many ways, and just really, really works. And then I think of the Wii Sakshi and the one I showed you before. Very similar. Some of the design elements are similar. Now, where did they get them? Did they get them from someone else? And is it kind of a little, mixture, if you will, a collage of different designs? And I think that's really what it comes down to. There's so many unique designs out there, and sometimes they build off of other things. And I think that eventually has led to, if you will, other ProTech Mordax like knives that I will probably end up getting because I can find them. They're not impossible to find. And that Grail knife that has been on my Grail knife that was number one for the longest time is moving down in my list. The chase of going after it, the joy of the chase is that you can get it and you can find it. You can have a Grail knife that is totally out of reach that you know you'll never have, um, because you can't afford it, or it's very hard to get, and you're not going to be in a position to get it at the time. But it's still possible to get. There are knives that you know will never be made again, right? And they're not grill knives; they're just knives that are like, oh, that was a beautiful design, but it's out of sight, if you will. It's not within my realm of wanting to get a hold of it, and I'm not going to go to the secondary market and pay more than the knife is worth. There are just too many other good designs out there, and too many other designs that I can chase down, if you will, and enjoy. So that was one of my grail knives, the psychology of the chase, right? So my grail knives are out there. Another one is the McNeese Mac 2, the 3.3.5 inch one. I want that in the Magna Cut, non-auto, in the titanium scales. I'd even take the aluminum scales as long as it's not automatic. But that is really one of those grail knives. I'd love to get a hold of that. Um, the EMP by EDC, the Relative, came out a little while ago. They had a pre-order. Wanted that, missed a pre-order. Then they had a drop today on Saturday. They had this beautiful drop. I got one. So there you go. There's the chase. There's the psychology, right? So there's one. Check that off. Then you have other knives that are out there that are just really fantastical, awesome knives. So there's the chase, the psychology, and so we enjoy hunting those down and finding them. So I'm always interested in finding a knife that's very functional, very useful. As a collector, I like to collect knives that I'll use. Now, as I've been doing this and doing these videos, and if you're curious, why am I into knives, and stuff, the question was, why do I collect them? Because I enjoy them. I enjoy using them. I use my knives. And to my wife, I don't get it. Well, I mean, think about it this way. There's things you collect. Everyone collects things. Um, and this is not trying to sound sexist, but my wife collects shoes. She loves shoes. Now, she'll buy inexpensive shoes and enjoy them, but she'll also like nice shoes and enjoy them. For her, it's more about having the mix and match of the shoes and how she can wear it with different clothing. I get that. For some people, that's the thing with knives. People will literally have a knife for what they wear. Totally cool with that. I mean, you can call a knife a man's jewelry. It really is. It could be a woman's jewelry too, because I know a lot of women who carry knives as well. Matter of fact, the women in my family, my wife and my sister-in-law and um, my daughter-in-law, and a lot of them have been influenced and have if you will, a trickle-down effect of some of the knives that I have collected and owned. And so I'm happy to know that they all have knives and carry them as well in their purses, right? Like a good Texas woman, almost every Texas woman will usually have a knife in their purse. So there you go. Those are things that you can augment your attire, your daily carry, whatever you're doing with. And so I always like to have a knife on. I use it all the time. I open something, I open a letter, I open a box, I open a package. I'll have a case of water. I'll open the plastic. I'll have a 6 pack of Diet Coke that I open for my wife. I'll cut the tabs because you know what? I don't want those tabs choking the sea turtles out in the Gulf. I don't want them killing birds. I don't want them killing animals needlessly because you know what? Uh, Even though I may want to hunt them, I may want all those things. I want to take care of those things. I want them to populate and live healthy and safely, and not have needless suffering and dying from something stupidity like that. So a knife to me is very useful for all of that, right? Sometimes you need to cut something. You just need to cut something. You have a wire, something that needs to be cut. And it's always great when, does anybody have a knife? And you can say, I do. Can I cut that for you? And so you can go cut them with a good, strong, sharp knife. And I always like to have a sharp knife, mind you. My knives, I like to have edges on them. If they're not sharp, I feel like that's a disservice to the knife and the tool you have. And there is a phrase of a dull edge, a sharp knife is a safe knife, and a dull knife is much more dangerous. And there's a lot of truth to that, because most people end up getting hurt from dull knives. It sounds crazy, but it's so true. When you have a sharp, useful tool that works well, you can use it well. You know what you can use it for, and you'll use it for what you can use it for. When it's dull and abused, you'll misuse those tools over and over and hurt yourself. And so there you go. Uh, so that's what for me. It's man's jewelry. Call it that. It's a tool that I like to have with me at all time. I like to have varying types of tools, and for me, I just enjoy that. I enjoy that. But again, like I said, these are my carry things. I have maybe one, maybe sort of two, but really one knife that's a safe queen. It's my dad's knife he bought before World War II. It's a fixed blade. It's almost 100 years old, and he bought it in Norway. And so it's one of those knives that even my sons have asked, could they inherit when I pass away? And so, sure, I would love them to carry on and take care of it and keep it for the next generation. I've sharpened it. It had started getting a little rust and some pits, and so I cleaned it out. The pitting from the rust, I buffed that out, and I've kept it oiled on the blade. It's not the greatest steel because it's very old steel, and it has wooden handles, so you have to kind of condition and make sure you take care of the wood. The leather sheath that it has, I had to condition the leather. Remember when I had it, it just sucked up all the leather conditioner. I mean, I literally felt like I used a half a bottle of leather conditioner just to keep it, not from cracking and drying up and breaking apart. So, those are some safe queens. And maybe my first knife I've ever owned, it's the little Gerber. Now, would I use it again? Sure, I'd throw it in my car and use it. I mean, reality is I usually keep a knife in the car, and it'll be an inexpensive knife that I can just throw in there to use. So I have that one, but I like to keep it also because it's kind of the first knife I ever bought. I was in high school, or it was right after high school. I was either in my I was 19, or I was in my early 20s when I bought that. And so, it's one of those knives I just keep around. I've always had. So that's my journey, and that's why I got into this, and that's what started me. That Benchmade, well, the CRKT, and then the Benchmade, and then another Benchmade, and then some more Benchmades, and then I realized, wait a second, there's other knives out there. There's zero tolerance. Oh boy, you get that zero tolerance 562 carbon fiber. Boy, that leads you to Rick Hinderer, right? You get Rick Hinderer, and I got the Rick Hinderer. I had a Rick Hinderer. Nice knife, beautiful design. Love the Rick Hinderer. Just not a knife for me. I know some people who love the Rick Hinders and enjoy them, collect them, whatever. Wonderful. It's just not my kind of knife. It's not a knife that I use. Now, there is that one called a Maximus. I did see one of those at a knife store, and I got to tell you, that Hinder Maximus, or Maximace, or, oh, what's it called? I think I have it's on my Grail list. So if I go to my Grail list real quick here, I'm going to go to that. Let's see here. Can I get to that? Knives. Here we are. Yeah, it's called the Maximus. Yeah, the Hinder Maximus. That's a beautiful knife. I mean, it looks like one of those dagger knives, but it's a flipper. Beautiful action. I really like that knife. It's one of the Hinders that I very much would like to get. But I hear they're only made every several years. And once they're out, they're sold out, and you have to wait again. So that's probably what's going to happen there. I'm not even going to consider it. It's on my list, but I probably won't be able to buy it for 2 or 3 more years. You have the McNees. You have the Prodac Mordax. There's the Tactile Knives Maverick that just came out, or is about to be released. I saw that knife. That's gorgeous. I would love to have that one. It's on my list. I got on their waiting list. Probably a 1 to 2 year waiting list, I'm sure. And then there's a Microtex coming out with their new MSI Ramlock. That's a Grail knife. Now, I've seen them drop a few. They're about 250, right? Not necessarily expensive, but it's Microtech. When it's something in demand, it's going to be hard to find. People are going to buy it, and the lack of demand, the lack of supply is going to increase the demand, and the increased demand is going to increase the price, and so the secondary market's going to be ridiculous. You're probably going to have to pay $500 for it, a $250 knife. And anyways, I'd like to wait when there's a carbon fiber with a hollow grind. And I know that will be more expensive. And so that's probably the one that I would eventually like to get when they make that. It'll be sort of like there's not a full custom, but, hollow grind, carbon fiber. I think that would be nice. So that's going to be on my list for a while. But there you go. But in the meantime, you can find inexpensive knives out there and you can try them. And you know what I like to do when I find a good inexpensive knives? I like to give them as gifts. I do. I've given them as gifts to family members. I've given gifts to my nephews. I've given to my sons. I've given uh, to my wife, to my sister-in-law. I've given them to my best friend's son. I do like to give those types of knives away, and for me, that I find pleasure in that. And I don't know if you knew this, but in early days, giving a knife was a great sign of respect. It really was. It was like a between men and friends. If you gave a knife, that was a very honorable thing to do. To give someone a knife, it was really respectful and honorable to do, and it meant a lot, right? It meant a lot of respect, a lot of honor there, and so I think there's a lot to be said about that still, and I don't disagree with that. I think there's a lot of truth to that, and so I would take that as an honor if someone were to give me a knife. I would be beyond honored, right? So that's my Rob's rambling. It's a long one. If you stayed this long, thank you. It's a full 30 minutes today. But it is my journey. It is my thoughts on it. It is where I'm at. I would love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear where your journey has taken you, what your experiences have been. Would you comment down below? I would love to hear that. I really would. I'd like to hear, I think it'd be a lot of fun to hear that because I know everybody's journey is different. Maybe you were a collector of knives you used and you transitioned. Maybe you now have two collections, a collection of knives you use and a collection of knives you just save. I don't know. Maybe you just collect knives that are affordable and usable and you don't like to collect things that are too expensive, and that's fine too, right? Um, Kind of where you're at. Maybe you have one or two knives and that's it. Just one, two really good knives and you're fine with that. Perfectly honorable. I know people who have one really nice watch, right? That could be even a fancy Rolex or Omega or something crazy like that. But if you have one really nice watch, do you really need another really nice watch? Now, some people will say, well, hey, different things you wear, right? I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear where your journey's from. I know some of the other guys who have YouTube channels. Love to watch their shows, their YouTube videos all the time. Enjoy their perspective, even if it's not exactly where I'm at, and even if we don't agree. I enjoy listening to them because I learned something. I learned something from them. I learned something about knives. I learned something about collecting. It opens up my mind to other things to think about in collecting and why that may be of value and why that may not be of value and maybe change my perspective. I can tell you one of the most radical videos I watched was from Metal Complex. He talked about, collect the knives you want to collect. Don't collect the knives that everyone tells you should collect. And I think that was probably the turning point for me when I heard it and I kind of molded over and chewed on it like cow chews on its cud. I guess I'm from Texas, so that's a phrase. But I mulled over it and thought about it. And after a while, I realized, yeah, that's true. And that's when I actually sold my Chris Reeve Unums on. And then I sold a Sharp by Design Mini Tempest. Those are great knives. Loved them. I just didn't carry them. They weren't the knives I wanted to carry. They weren't the ones that I would use, right? Then I sold my Rick Hinder. And then I sold several other knives that I just stopped carrying. Just I got them because everyone said, "Oh, this is the knife you want to get," and I realized, no, these are knives that I got because they told me to get them, but they're really not for me. And so now when I look at knives, I look at them for my aesthetic, what I want. I look at them for the functionality I want in them. Most knives I like to collect nowadays have multiple deployments. I really enjoy the fidget factor of every knife. It's gotta have a fidget factor, a comfort, a contour, and all that stuff. So those are things I look for, right? I look for the quality of materials, things that I know it's gonna last and enjoy. So, you know, what are yours? Again, feel free to comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Hey, and if you enjoyed this and you stuck around this long, would you consider subscribing? It'll allow you to allow you to let me know that what I'm sharing is of value and content that you enjoy, and I'll keep producing more. And then if you subscribe, I assume maybe you like this particular video. Would you consider hitting the like button? That would really help me out. And then also hit that notification button. It'll allow you to be notified of upcoming videos that I drop. And then, if you like all of this, check me out over on Instagram at robs_nerdy_knives. That's robs_nerdy_knives. Again, thanks so much for watching today. Have a great day and a great week. Bye.